Sienna God, hello all. Oshisahi, good evening, and Wado, thank you for watching. So this is day 19, part A of Reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, an Inquiry into Values by Robert M. Persig. This is the detail of the quality relationship, the gumption relationship between the machine and the mechanic, which is just as intricate as the machine itself. Throughout the process of fixing the machine, things always come up, low quality things, from a dusted knuckle to an accidentally ruined, irreplaceable assembly. These drain off gumption, destroy enthusiasm, and leave you so discouraged you want to forget the whole business. I call these things gumption traps. There are hundreds of different kinds of gumption traps, maybe thousands, maybe millions. I have no way of knowing how many I don't know. I know it seems as though I've stumbled into every kind of gumption trap imaginable. What keeps me from thinking I've hit them all is that with every job I discover more. Motorcycle maintenance gets frustrated, angering, infuriated. That's what makes it interesting. The map before me says the town of Baker is soon ahead. I see we're in better agricultural land now. More rain here. What I have in mind now is a catalog of gumption traps I have known. I want to start a whole new academic field, gumptionology, in which these traps are sorted, classified, structured into hierarchies, and interrelated for the edification of future generations and the benefit of all mankind. Gumptionology, 101. An examination, or 101, excuse me. An examination of effective cognitive and psychomotor blocks and the perception of quality relationships. 3 CRVII, so I guess it's 8 in Roman numeral, MWF. I'd like to see that in a college catalog somewhere. Oh, that's funny, like a course, I get it. In traditional maintenance, gumption is considered something you're born with or have acquired as a result of good upbringing. Oh yeah, it's a fixed commodity. From the lack of information about how one acquires this gumption, one might assume that a person without any gumption is a hopeless case. In non-dualistic maintenance, gumption isn't a fixed commodity. It's variable, a reservoir of good spirits that can be added to or subtracted from. Since it's a result of the perception of quality, a gumption trap consequently can be defined as anything that causes one to lose sight of quality and thus lose one's enthusiasm for what one is doing. As one might guess from a definition as broad as this, the field is enormous and only a beginning sketch can be attempted here. As far as I can see, there are two main types of gumption traps. The first type are those in which you're thrown off the quality track by conditions that arise from external circumstances, and I call these setbacks. The second type are traps in which you're thrown off the quality track by conditions that are primarily within yourself. These I don't have any generic name for. Hang-ups, I suppose. I'll take up the externally caused setbacks first. The first time you do any major job, it seems as though the out-of-sequence reassembly setback is your biggest worry. This occurs usually at a time when you think you're almost done. After days of work, you finally have it all together, except for, what's this? A connecting rod-bearing liner? How could you have left that out? Oh, Jesus. Everything's got to come apart again. You can almost hear the gumption escaping. Psst. That's true. The wind out of your sails, right? Anyway, there's nothing you can do but go back and take it all apart again. After a rest period of up to a month that allows you to get used to the idea. Oh yeah, right. Like, I'll hold this off. And you keep like avoiding it, staring at it, like thinking about it and stuff, walking past it, you know. Anyway. And then you're like settled with it. Okay, yeah, fine. This is what has to happen, right? There's nothing you can do, but oh yeah. There are two techniques I use to prevent the out-of-sequence reassembly setback. I use them mainly when I'm getting into a complex assembly I don't know anything about. It should be inserted here, parenthetically, that there's a school of mechanical thought which says I shouldn't be getting into a complex assembly I don't know anything about. I should have training or leave the job to a specialist. That's a self-serving tool of mechanical eliteness I'd like to see wiped out. That was a specialist who broke the fins on this machine. I've edited manuals written to train specialists for IBM, and what they know when they're done isn't that great. You're at a disadvantage the first time around, and It may cost you a little more because of parts you accidentally damage, and it will almost undoubtedly take a lot more time. But the next time around, you're way ahead of the specialist. You, with gumption, have learned the assembly the hard way, and you've a whole set of good feelings about it that he's unlikely to have. Anyway, the first technique for preventing the out-of-sequence reassembly gumption trap is a notebook in which I write down the order of disassembly and note anything unusual that might give trouble in reassembly later on. This notebook is plenty grease-smeared and ugly, but a number of times, 1 or 2 words in it that didn't seem important when written down have prevented damage and saved hours of work. The notes should pay special attention to left hand and right hand, and up and down orientations of parts and color coding and positions of wires. If incidental parts look worn or damaged or loose, this is the time to note it so that you can make all your parts purchases at the same time. The second technique for preventing the out-of-sequence reassembly gumption trap is newspapers opened out on the floor of the garage on which all the parts are laid left to right, top to bottom, in the order in which you read a page. That way, when you put it all back together in reverse order, the little screws and washers and pins that can be easily overlooked are brought to your attention as you need them. Even with all these precautions, however, out-of-sequence reassemblies sometimes occur, and when they do, you've got to watch the gumption. Watch out for gumption desperation, yeah, in which you hurry up wildly in an effort to restore gumption by making up for lost time. That just creates more mistakes. Yeah, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Anyway, when you first see that you have to go back and take it apart all over again, it's definitely time for that long break. Yeah. It's important to distinguish from these the reassemblies that were out of sequence because you lacked certain information. Frequently, the whole reassembly process becomes a cut and try technique in which you have to take it apart to make a change and then put it together again to see if the change works. If it doesn't work, that isn't a setback because the information gained is real progress. But if you've made just a plain old dumb mistake in reassembly, some gumption can still be salvaged by the knowledge that the second disassembly and reassembly is likely to go much faster than the first one. You've unconsciously memorized all sorts of things you won't have to relearn. From Baker, the cycle has taken us up through forests. The forest road takes us through a pass and down through more forests on the other side. As we move again down the side of the mountain, we see the trees thin out even more until we are in desert again. The intermittent failure setback is next. And the thing that is wrong becomes right all of a sudden, just as you start to fix it. Electrical short circuits are often in this class. The short occurs only when the machine's bouncing around. As soon as you stop, everything's okay. It's almost impossible to fix it then. All you can do is try to get it to go wrong again, and if it won't, forget it. Intermittents become gumption traps when they fool you into thinking you've really got the machine fixed. It's always a good idea on any job to wait a few 100 miles before coming to that conclusion. They're discouraging when they crop up again and again. But when they do, you're no worse off than someone who goes to a commercial mechanic. In fact, you're better off. They're much more of a gumption trap for the owner who has to drive his machine to the shop again and again and never get satisfaction. On your own machine, you can study them over a long period of time, something a commercial mechanic can't do, and you can just carry around the tools you think you'll need until the intermittent happens again, and then when it happens, stop and work on it. When intermittents recur, try to correlate them with other things this cycle is doing. Do the misfires, for example, occur only on bumps, only on turns, only on acceleration, only on hot days? These correlations are clues for cause and effect hypothesis. In some intermittents, you have to resign yourself to a long fishing expedition, but no matter how tedious that gets, it's never as tedious as taking the machine to a commercial mechanic 5 times. Absolutely. I'm tempted to go into long detail about intermittents I have known, with a blow-by-blow description of how these were solved, but this gets like those fishing stories of interest mainly to the fisherman who doesn't quite catch on to why everybody yawns. That's funny. He enjoyed it. Next to misassemblies and intermittents, I think the most common external gumption trap is the parts setback. Here, a person who does his own work can get depressed in a number of ways. Parts are something you never plan on buying when you originally get the machine. Dealers like to keep their inventory small. Wholesalers are slow and always understaffed in the spring when everybody buys motorcycle parts. The pricing on parts is the second part of this gumption trap. It's a well-known industrial policy to price the original equipment competitively because the customer can always go somewhere else, but on parts to overprice and clean up. Oh, wow. The price of the part is not only jacked up way beyond its new price, you get a special price because you're not a commercial mechanic. Oh. This is a sly arrangement that allows the commercial mechanic to get rich by putting in parts that aren't needed. One more hurdle yet. The part may not fit. Parts lists always contain mistakes. Make and model changes are confusing. Out of tolerance parts runs, sometimes getting through quality control. Out of tolerance parts run sometimes. I wonder if that's an R because it looks like it's cut off. So I'm not sure. Maybe it says parts runs. Sometimes gets through quality control because there's no operating checkout at the factory. I don't know. Some of the parts you buy are made by specialty houses who don't have access to the engineering data needed to make them right. Sometimes they get confused about make and model changes. Sometimes the parts man you're dealing with jots down the wrong number. Sometimes you don't give him the right identification, but it's always a major gumption trap to get all the way home and discover that the new part won't work. Oh yeah. The parts traps may be overcome by a combination of a number of techniques. Hopefully you're realizing that this really isn't about motorcycles. This is about life, right? Everything that we come across, anything can just like mow down the gumption, right? just drain it out like a sump pump or something. So everything that this guy is saying is literally about life. So hopefully you're thinking about, oh, well, variables that I cannot control, variables that I can, meaning I, have my morning routine and I do all these things. And if something happens, I can choose to pivot or I can choose to get upset about it, right? And life is full of pivots. So why would you get upset about things that are naturally occurring? Anybody can have traffic. Anybody can have the coffee pot die. Anybody can have the plumbing leak all of a sudden. Anybody can have the kid that all of a sudden wakes up and they haven't woken you up in forever, but they wake you up and you're already exhausted and all of that. And literally, right? That's life, okay? You get the good sleep or you don't. When the kids are gone, you may or may not because something could happen. So are you always going to be nasty when life makes you pivot? Or are you going to understand that there are pivots in life and just go with it? Pivot and be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this later then. I'm going to make a note. I'm going to do whatever. You know what I mean? And look at everything that you were able to accomplish that day. Like sometimes I have to catch myself because it doesn't feel like I did a lot in the day. And then I got to look at it like, hold on. I did what I was supposed to do as far as being there for my son, my husband, and maybe I got one other thing done that was on my list or something, but I didn't get anything else. Like maybe I did the laundry, but everything else didn't get done. But my son really needed me, like for most of the day. And then my hubster needed me, right? So I can't look at it as a failure on myself. I actually did the dang thing, right? And the laundry, it could have waited, or whatever else was on my list to do could have waited. Like reading these books to you, like it can wait. Seriously, nobody's gonna die if I don't read the book, or nobody's gonna die if I don't do the wash that day. I can literally do it tomorrow morning or whatever. You know what I mean? It's okay. Anyway, let me bump this up so I can see better. All right, got that done so I can see the clock. And then I found the spot. The parts traps may be overcome by a combination of a number of techniques. First, if there's more than one supplier in town, by all means, choose the one with the most cooperative partsman. Get to know him on a first-name basis. Often he will have been a mechanic once himself and can provide a lot of information you need. Keep an eye out for price cutters and give them a try. Some of them have good deals. Auto stores and mail order houses frequently stock the commoner cycle parts at prices way below those of the cycle dealers. You can buy roller chain from chain manufacturers, for example, at way below the inflated cycle shop prices. Always take the old part with you to prevent getting a wrong part. Absolutely. Take along some machinist's calipers for comparing dimensions. Finally, if you're as exasperated as I am by the parts problem and have some money to invest, you can take up the really fascinating hobby of machining your own parts. I have a little 6x18-inch lathe with a milling attachment and a full complement of welding equipment: arc, heli arc, gas, and mini gas for this kind of work. With the welding equipment, you can build up worn surfaces with better than original metal and then machine it back to tolerance with carbide tools. You can't really believe how versatile that lathe plus milling plus welding arrangement is until you've used it. If you can't do the job directly, you can always make something that will do it. The work of machining a part is very slow, and some parts, such as ball bearings, you're never going to machine. But you'd be amazed at how you can modify parts designs so that you can make them with your equipment. And the work isn't nearly as slow or frustrating as a wait for some smirking parts man to send away to the factory. And the work is gumption building, not gumption destroying. Yeah, it's empowering. To run a cycle with parts in it you've made yourself gives you a special feeling you can't possibly get from strictly store-bought parts. We've come into the stage and sand of the desert, and the engines started to sputter. I switched the reserve gas tank and studied the map. We fill up at a town called Unity, and down the hot black road through the sagebrush we go. Well, those were the commonest setbacks I can think of: out-of-sequence reassembly, intermittent failure, and parts problems. But all those setbacks are the commonest gumption traps. They're only the external cause of gumption loss. Time now to consider some of the internal gumption traps that operate at the same time. As the course description of gumptionology indicated, this internal part of the field can be broken down into three main types of internal gumption traps: those that block effective understanding, called value traps; those that block cognitive understanding, called truth traps; and those that block psychomotor behavior, called muscle traps. The value traps are by far the largest and the most dangerous group. Of the value traps, the most widespread and pernicious is value rigidity. This is an inability to revalue what one sees because of commitment to previous values. In motorcycle maintenance, you must rediscover what you do as you go. Rigid values makes this impossible. The typical situation is that the motorcycle doesn't work. The facts are there, but you don't see them. You're looking right at them, but they don't yet have enough value. This is what Phaedrus was talking about: quality. Value creates the subjects and objects of the world. The facts do not exist until value has created them. If your values are rigid, you can't really learn new facts. This often shows up in the premature diagnosis, when you're sure you know what the trouble is, and then when it isn't, you're stuck. Then you've got to find some new clues, but before you can find them, you've got to clear your head of old opinions. If you're plagued with value rigidity, you can fail to see the real answer, even when it's staring you right in the face, because you can't see the new answer's importance. And you can't see the forest for the trees, right? The birth of a new fact is always a wonderful thing to experience. It's dualistically called a discovery because of the presumption that it has an existence independent of anyone's awareness of it. When it comes along, it always has at first a low value. Then, depending on the value looseness of the observer and the potential quality of the fact, its value increases either slowly or rapidly, or the value wanes and the fact disappears. The overwhelming majority of facts, the sights and sounds that are around us every second and the relationships among them, and everything in our memory, these have no quality. In fact, have a negative quality. If they were all present at once, our consciousness would be so jammed with meaningless data we couldn't think or act. Donde ko hangi we meet again. Love you,